Katharina Plain-Martin says goodbye to her husband in Berlin. The retired Lutheran pastor has taken a voluntary post as chaplain on board a cruise ship, and she'll be ministering to the crew and passengers for 2 weeks. Today, she's flying to Italy, where she'll board the ship. The MS Albatross is awaiting its passengers in the port of Genoa. There'll be 650 on this voyage. The ship's photographer is already busy at the terminal. She'll be taking pictures every day and selling them on board. It's 6 p.m. now, and the pastor is one of the last to arrive. This is Katharina Plain-Martin's first voyage on the Albatross. She has to get to work right away because her first church service is scheduled for the morning. They haven't told her yet where. By tomorrow, the ship will be on the high seas, heading for the island of Sicily. Before departure, the passengers have to be familiarized with the safety drills. They are much the same as the safety procedures in aircraft, at least in theory. As the passengers cheerfully march to the lifeboats, they appear to be unaware of how rough the Mediterranean can become. This exercise is a serious matter. For most of them, it's their first opportunity to meet their fellow travelers and to get to know the people in a neighboring cabin or at a nearby table.
We sail at 8 o'clock sharp. I wish you a pleasant voyage to the Aegean. Have fun.
And the Albatross sets sail. The passengers are still fumbling with their life jackets as the crew return to their posts on ship. On the first evening, there's a meeting of all the auxiliary personnel on board. In the ship's hierarchy, the chaplain ranks among the entertainers, alongside dancers and lecturers.
I'm Katharina, and I'm not part of the stage show. I'm here to serve the spiritual needs of the passengers and crew.
But she still hasn't been told where the morning service will be held.
It's always quite nerve-wracking at first. Will I find someone to play the hymns? Where are the hymnals, the cross and candles stored? And where will the service take place? I only have the first evening to get my bearings, and then at 9 o'clock the next morning, I hold the first service.
Good morning. I'm Katharina.
Yeah,
I'm the pastor.
I'm the head utility.
Yeah, fine. Rodrigo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the pastor doesn't like the red candles. Good thing she brought along a white one.
So I brought it from Berlin.
And she's found a pianist among the artists on board, a musician from Slovakia. He's been playing on cruise ships for a long time.
Should I play an intro?
Yes, a short one.
His name is Peter, like Katharina's husband. All the artists on board are on first-name terms.
I learned that on my first voyage. They said, "Pastor, please don't be too formal. Everybody's on a first-name basis on board, and it'd be uncomfortable if someone were to insist on being addressed by their surname or as pastor." I think that's nice, easygoing. That's the way it is here. And once that's made clear, it's not a problem.
Peter doesn't usually play the piano so early in the day. He generally plays in the evening, and not church music.
I play whatever the guests want to hear. My speciality is Broadway musicals and evergreens. But I also play classics, golden oldies, a little bit of everything.
This music isn't a challenge for you, is it?
What? Oh, no, no, no. It is new to me. I don't do this very often, but it's a good experience.
Just a small notice in the ship's daily program drew the passengers' attention to the church service. Still, the Caribbean lounge is crowded.
Good morning. I'm delighted that so many of you have come to this service. It's my first voyage on the Albatross, and I had no idea what to expect. I'm pleasantly surprised by how many of you have decided to attend. It's wonderful.
The service lasts nearly an hour. These seafarers really seem to enjoy singing. It's more than the pastor had hoped for.
Und so geht nun in den ersten Tag eures Urlaubs in die schöne Zeit, die vor euch liegt, mit dem Segen des Herrn. Der Herr segne dich und behüte dich. Der Herr lasse sein Angesicht leuchten über dir und sei dir gnädig. Der Herr erhebe sein Angesicht auf dich und schenke dir seinen Frieden. Amen.
The service went well, but the pastor's day is just beginning.
Da gibt es gleich ein
There's a singles meeting at 10:15. I can't remember where exactly. I think it's on deck 6. I'll go along to meet the people and introduce myself. Afterwards, we'll have a rehearsal for this evening's show. Then I'll just have to see.
Und ich muss einfach mal weiter gucken.
Who will love you? Who will love you? Who will love you when you're old? Who will hold you?
Most of the passengers on this Mediterranean cruise are retired. They're enjoying, as they say, their golden years. Most of them are traveling with husbands or wives, but some of them are on their own. Katharina especially wants to meet those passengers, because many of them are seeking social interaction.
Ich begleite auch Ausflüge mit, gehe mit
I'll be taking part in the excursions, going up Mount Etna and everything else. And I'm always pleased when anyone attends worship service, but I'm also glad for any opportunity to have a little chat, so the people who are traveling on their own don't feel alone.
Alleine reisend, aber doch nicht einsam fühlt.
The program on board is so extensive that nobody needs to feel lonely. The captain's dinner is rooted in tradition, and it's the first highlight of the trip. There's a formal dress code in the dining room, personal introductions to the captain, and of course the souvenir photo. The backdrop may be waving a little, but everyone's smiling, and that's the main thing.
Herzlich willkommen. Guten Abend. Herzlich willkommen an Bord. Ein Bild? Wollen wir ein Bild zusammen machen? Die Dame in die Mitte? Oder soll ich in die Mitte?
This evening is also the photographer's dream, because there's hardly anybody who doesn't want a souvenir photo. It's all a little out of the ordinary for the pastor, but she plays along.
Stay and warm you when you're cold.
During the night, the Albatross arrives in Sicily. Time to go ashore. The pastor takes responsibility for one of the groups that's going up Mount Etna. She has to see that everybody gets onto the right bus and that all the passengers return to the ship. Europe's highest volcano is also its most active. Because it's so large and stretched out, there are sections that are always safe to climb. Here, for example.
At the Silvestri craters, it looks amazing when people walk along the edges, and especially when they're dressed in bright clothes, it's gorgeous. It's a terrific photo opportunity.
The climb is tough on some of the older passengers. Gusts of wind and rocky scree don't make it any easier. Katharina has to keep an eye on her flock. Sometimes she lends a helping hand.
In one case, I was really frightened. There was a very frail man who'd already fallen down once. Frankly, we can do without people breaking or spraining a foot and being unable to continue. So I always have a first aid kit with me. Anything can happen if someone's not careful. That's why we need somebody in addition to the guide to keep an eye on things.
The entertainment that's offered each evening quickly dispels the stress of the day. Passengers can dance the night away or relax at the bar. The pastor's also here. She's keen to see the performers in action. This cabaret act captivates the audience with black humor and sentimental songs. Back in the Caribbean lounge, we run into the pianist, Peter. He's playing with a lot more verve than he did at the church service this morning. After a few days on board the Albatross, the German pastor reviews her work. She's already spoken to a lot of passengers, and she's become familiar with life on board the ship.
She's a really charming cruise ship, and I have the impression people choose her quite deliberately. That's quite touching. Some of the passengers have been on this vessel 20 times, and they always choose the same cabin. For them, this ship is the gateway to the world, or the window onto a multifaceted life. Many of them have difficulty getting around, and for them, of course, it's wonderful to be taken to places they couldn't reach otherwise.
The passengers have 8 decks at their disposal. On the days spent at sea, with no land in sight and nothing to photograph, some passengers devote themselves to light exercise. One example is shuffleboard. Here, one enthusiastic player explains the game to the curious pastor. Depending on whether the disc lands on a field with numbers or outside those fields, a player wins or loses points.
Stehen Sie gut? Stehen Sie gerade gut?
Ja, ja, ich weiß jetzt nicht, was das da oben jetzt ergeben hat, aber bis jetzt stand ich gut, ja.
Okay, dann wünsche ich Ihnen viel Erfolg.
The captain met the pastor only briefly on the first evening out of Genoa. Today he has more time, and he invites her up to the bridge.
I think it's great that we've got a pastor on board. It's not enough just to have something like a casino on board. I think it's great that we have this feature as well.
There are people to whom it's important. People who may not go to church when they're at home. Here they're on holiday and have time. They take advantage of the opportunity and perhaps discover what it can give them in a very positive sense.
The cruise ship is sailing through waters often used by refugees in small boats. The pastor asked the captain how he'd react if he sighted one.
As sailors, we have a duty to help anybody who's in distress. The weather's great and we're having a wonderful journey, but just 200 sea miles from here is the area where a lot of things are happening. It's certainly true that we are closer to the events here than, say, the people in Germany.
It's a very topical issue, and I've made it my business to put it into the prayers. We're all safe, we're all happy and can relax. But what about the people who can't? I've focused on this issue in my services, and I'll continue to do so.
The pastor enjoys meeting people. Here she takes time to chat with a woman who's celebrating her golden wedding anniversary.
I recently asked someone on her golden anniversary, what attracted you to your husband back then? Why did you marry him? Now what about you? Do you remember?
Because we were in love, and we still are.
Ja, gut.
Katharina Plain-Martens is not on holiday. She provides a service, and she's always available to talk. But when people are celebrating their wedding anniversary, it also gives her pleasure. Sometimes the conversation turns to lighter topics, such as this feathered stowaway that's just been discovered.
Our theory is that it came on board in Sicily and is now stuck here. It has to wait until we get close to some land because it can't fly so far. So it's moving from Sicily to Santorini.
The pastor also visits the ship's doctor. She points out that if any patients need psychological support, she's willing to provide it. And once again, she raises the refugee issue.
I was just talking to the captain, and I mentioned some difficult issues, such as the refugee situation. I suspect you've been thinking about it too.
I gave it some thought before I joined the ship. What would it be like if we had to take all those people on board? Of course, we would have to make room for them, no question about it.
Neither realizes at this point how directly they will be confronted with the refugee crisis. Today, there's another highlight on the program, an excursion to the island of Santorini. The Albatross has finally reached Greece. After days of bad mobile phone connections at sea, Katharina can finally talk to her husband.
The weather's good. It's not too hot. I'm curious about what Santorini will be like. They say it's the most beautiful of all the Greek islands. Oh, now the guide's waving. I have to go. Thanks for calling, sweetheart. Bye-bye.
Tschüss.
The island is big, and today the sun is scorching. Today's program is ambitious. It may even be tough for some of the younger passengers.
It's hard to take in all the beauty of this island because we move on so quickly, and a cruise has nothing to do with soft tourism. I know the criticism, but I don't think it's quite fair. It's not my experience. Especially in this difficult economic situation, it's a source of income for the people who live here. We can only hope the passengers have enough time to spend their money. That's the only justification for allowing them to come here.
But for this group of tourists, there's no time to shop. In the crowded alleyways, the group can only move slowly, and the heat is stifling. One woman has already given up. She says her legs won't carry her a step further. The pastor comes to the rescue, offering words of comfort and encouragement.
I understand that she wants to take part in everything and enjoy life, and it must be extremely hard to be confronted with her limitations and to accept them. She doesn't use a cane. I asked her why she didn't have a walking aid. I do, she said, but I haven't learnt to use it.
It was a tiring day for everybody. After all that exercise, the dance floor this evening is empty. All the passengers who went on the excursion are relaxing in their cabins. The ship sails on to another island. This morning, the Albatross will dock in Kos. While the German tourists start their day, a small boat with refugees is making for the harbor, escorted by the Greek Coast Guard. The passengers on the Albatross have sighted the boat. Later they discover that it was crowded with refugees from the war in Syria.
I'd say the good thing is that these people have arrived here safely.
It's not the same as when you see it on TV at home. It hits you a lot harder.
Someone's collecting documents, a young woman. Each of them is giving her a piece of paper. That looks like a passport or something. They're just sitting there, and you have the feeling you ought to do something. But there's nothing we can do. The Greek authorities have to handle it, not us. What can I do? I can't go to the refugees and say, "Hello, I'm a pastor, shall I give you a blessing?" No one wants that. They don't need it. But it just occurred to me I might go to the cruise director or somebody else I can find and suggest giving the refugees the food that's left over. They must be tired and hungry. I feel the need to act. You can't just look on.
The cruise director is prepared for situations like this. It's complicated politically and difficult from a human point of view.
We've also been thinking about it. We've offered to help, but the Greek authorities don't want us to get too involved. I went over and asked. They said everything's okay, we've got everything under control, so we don't want to interfere.
The pastor finds this troubling, but there's nothing she can do. This is a cruise with a program, a tight schedule. What will happen to the refugees?
It's complicated. We haven't done enough, that has to be said. And now we have to leave.
The biggest problem is that the people can't be accommodated here. They have to be sent on, and even in Berlin, the limited accommodation is overcrowded. It's difficult. And then, of course, there are people who own a big house and live alone in it. Perhaps they'll come to the conclusion that they ought to take somebody in.
So near, and yet so far. There is nothing the passengers can do to help. And off they go. The Syrian families are entering an uncharted future. The tourists will not encounter another refugee boat on this trip. But perhaps Pastor Katharina Plain-Martens has succeeded in making some of them reflect more deeply on the plight of the refugees. The services, at which she regularly highlights the crisis, continue to be well attended.
Christi Blut für dich vergossen.
She's proud of what she has managed to achieve as chaplain on this Mediterranean cruise.
Just imagine, if a parish in Berlin were to get 10% attendance at its services regularly, the pastor would be over the moon.
On board, there's another occasion to celebrate, the golden wedding anniversary of Mr. and Mrs. Schultz. It's the 4th anniversary during the 2-week cruise. Suddenly, all the other worries are forgotten. The party atmosphere is infectious. The crew do their bit to raise everybody's spirits as they sing their congratulations with great gusto. For Katharina Plain-Martens, it's moments like these that make her work as a pastor so rewarding. And she's already thinking about the next cruise, where she'll go on board as chaplain.